We live in color, emotional beings. From moment to moment, it can change.
And the dynamics of the choir or chorale itself. I think the personal experiences, not only that you and I have had, but when we are working with clients, for example, and as you mentioned, when they come in and they talk about their experiences that may not have been so positive, it's just not that one-time thing. It stays with them. And
Definitely.
I don't really know if and to what extent, using that dissertation phrasing, choir directors realize the impact that they have. It's not just the music, but it's that rapport, that trust that ultimately will probably more negatively than positively impact the individual members, as well as the dynamics of the chorale or choir as a whole. What I find interesting is a director here, part of my experiences used to be that he would always tell the audience during the performance how he would beat us up on Monday nights at rehearsals, and we would still come back.
Oh, wow. Oh, well, that is the opposite of what you want to do. Positive relationships and positive atmosphere provides not only a stronger performance, but stronger relationships within the choir, because that is a community, right? A choir is a community. And, even the choral dynamic versus the solo dynamic, right? There are studies that show singing in a choir is healing. It is mentally and emotionally and even physically healing. And so if you create an environment that is toxic and painful, and the individuals that are a part of the choir feel attacked and disrespected, and devalued, it has the complete opposite effect. Singing in a choir should be a healing and fulfilling experience. There are individuals that sing in choirs specifically for that experience, specifically for the relationships that come out of it, the sense of community, the love that is shared, the hard work, right? That team dynamic. There are people that genuinely sing in choirs for that. They may not even be the best singer. It's not about that. It is about the benefits that they draw, and as a collective, the benefits that they give to the audience. So when that is not facilitated properly, number one, your performances aren't going to be as strong. Number two, you are devaluing and harming individuals, because now that becomes, instead of a fulfilling experience, it's an experience linked to trauma, because now you've wounded their self-efficacy, you've wounded in some instances their self-esteem. When I meet people individually that come for vocal coaching, and they talk about the instances that have caused them trauma and the barriers that they have to psychologically overcome, a lot of those experiences stem from either mom, dad, or choral directors. And I mean, this is from children, this is from teenagers, this is from adults who may have carried these experiences and this pain for a long time in their lives. And I just think that is, it's an opportunity for us to learn what not to say to our children.
Mhm.
And if we are given the opportunity to lead people, um, to lead them in a righteous and positive manner, we don't want to step on people. That should not be your goal in being a choral director, where you are being insulting and condescending. There's a way to teach, there's a way to instruct and guide without being a negative, condescending individual.
Mhm. And it is extremely difficult to engage and immerse yourself in the music when you never know when your director is going to have a screaming fit. I
Most
called it
definitely.
I called it terrorism
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
never had any idea. It was impossible to identify what the trigger was. So you'd be going along thinking, well, we're making progress. All of a sudden, for whatever the reason may have been,
Mhm.
it would set the director off. And I mean literally screaming, not just raising your voice. There's a difference. And then of course the impact of that and what it takes to regroup. And perhaps that regrouping never even occurred during that 2.5 hour rehearsal.
Yeah. Yeah. See, oh my goodness. First of all, let's just start here. Okay. To elevate your voice when you are addressing a room full of adults is disrespectful. To start screaming at adults is not only grossly disrespectful, it's egregious. And you are modeling abusive behavior vocally
Mhm.
because to scream is considered vocal abuse. So if you are screaming at your choral members, that shows a lack of not only respect, but a lack of knowledge and wisdom on
Mhm.
your part as the leader of this group. And there should never be anything that happens in a choral rehearsal where the choir director needs to start screaming. That level of that lack of self-control is incredible. You should not be leading people in a choral manner if you cannot contain yourself. That doesn't make any sense.
That was my perspective. That is it is it a sort of a fear that you aren't getting your point across or you can't control the choir or the situation, or you're unable to communicate the music, or maybe help to correct. I don't even know if I want to use that word in the conversation, but help your members perhaps master something, a very difficult section of a piece.
Hmm. Sure. Well, here's the question that I would ask. Are you having an issue with the choir, or are you having an issue because you don't have the skill set to properly communicate the music to the choir? Because if they are not getting it, is it that they're not getting it, or are you not the way that you are attempting to teach, is that ineffective? So are you frustrated with them, or are you frustrated with you?
Good question.
That is the question that I would ask someone that just blows off and starts screaming at the choir. And who is going to take that type of abuse? People, people may take that for a while, but then after a while, it's like, I'm done. This is opposite of the experience that I was looking for.
And a question is, too, how to identify certain problems and issues within a dynamic. So, for example, in one of the Florida chorales, the membership started to drop off, and not just new members. The members that were leaving had been with the chorale for years. The new members that had the potential of joining might come to one rehearsal and never come back. So, what kind of a message does that send? Number one. But number two, why isn't the director and perhaps even the creative director, not because they're not necessarily one and the same thing, why aren't they identifying this issue?
Well, because a lot of times the common denominator is them. So they don't want to address the issue because then they have to deal with their own shortcomings.
Mhm,
And there are many principles that are generalizable. So it's just like if you and I go into a corporation or a company, and if they bring us in because they have a high turnover rate, they have an issue with retention,
mhm,
and we go in and we start to because if a company has a low retention rate, they're not able to keep employees. There's a reason.
mhm,
And so then we go in and we start to analyze their day-to-day processes, and then we see their managerial staff is very condescending and in some cases downright mean to the employees.
mhm,
Or if the atmosphere if the morale of the atmosphere is just really low, nobody really cares, nobody is happy, everybody hates it when their alarm goes off in the morning.
mhm,
Because well, then it's our job to dig down and find out why. So when we start talking to people, you get all of that data based on the conversations that you have with people, and then you see this picture form. Like, oh, this is not a nice place to work. The people that are in manager positions, the higher up positions, are mean and condescending and they don't care. Oh, these people don't get health care. Oh, these people are paid poorly. Their compensation is not keeping up with the cost of living. Oh, there are no perks to work here. It's just come here, slave. I'm going to pay you pennies and you go home. Well, after a while, people may do that, in the interim, just, for a moment. But after a while, it's like, I'm leaving. They're going to stay there until they find something else.
mhm,
Why? Because there's such a negative impact when you know, you go to a job, ideally, you should be receiving
mhm,
things. It should be assets. If you look at it like a general ledger, you should be getting paid, you should have health insurance, you would think. And it should be uh, 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 giving you things where it's making your life better,
mhm,
not worse. Not I come home every evening. Not only I didn't make much money, but I'm stressed out. I
mhm.
feel bad. My self-esteem is lower than when I started. I always feel like I'm being attacked. I'm always being micromanaged. All of these things, um, it's the same principle. If you go to a choir, if you become a part of a choir, you're looking for not only the assets that come to you as a person, the benefits that come to you as a person, but how can we be beneficial to our audience? So it's a collective that wants to bring benefits to the greater audience in general, the greater community, which is their audience. So when you're not doing that, it's not going to um, it's not going to feel good. You're not going to stay, and it's going to be a negative experience versus an enriching one.
And that actually brings up another point. in communicating and engaging with your audience, if the choir themselves is not feeling good and confident and one with the music, that's going to come across to the audience. So I'm using that same group as an example, but the ticket sales and the audience engagement have been steadily declining over time as well. So they may not be identifying that as part of this greater whole, if you will, that, the domino effect, one thing leads to another.
Definitely, definitely. Because the audience feels that energy, you know. It's just like, I try to stay away from fast food at all costs, but I like to get in the car and go places, right? So I'm always on the road. And so, sometimes I'll stop at a place and it's like, these people are genuinely happy to work here. They're pleasant, they're upbeat. Hi, can I take your order? It's just, you get to the window, everybody's working as a team. You can feel the atmosphere coming through the
Mhm.
drive-through window, right? Based on the interaction that you have with the employees that are assisting you and the employees that you can, if you look through the window, you can see people working. You
Mhm.
can feel the atmosphere. And then you go to some restaurants and it's just like,
Oh,
I mean, they may as well just say, "What do you want?" That's just based on their energy. And you get to the window and it's like, everybody looks stressed out. And
Mhm.
it has nothing to do with it being a busy time, because you can go to one place and it's very busy and everybody still stays pleasant. You can tell that, they're pushing it, but everybody still has a pleasant mood. But this other place, it's a very different experience. And it's, you know, the way that they're engaging with you as the customer. When you are singing, that's the customer, so to speak. This
Mm.
is the person that you're serving. And they can feel when the choir is not confident, when the choir is not cohesive, when the morale is low. You can feel that energy
Mhm.
through the music. You can feel that disjunct atmosphere when they're singing. And so, I can see why ticket sales will go down, or people just would not be as interested, because we want to feel like, as the audience, when a choir is singing, we want to feel like we're engaged, not just through the music, but through the relationships that are interwoven in that choir. And that includes the choir director's relationship
Mhm.
with the singers. And so if that is um, negative, that's going to affect how the audience feels it. And so how the audience engages with it, or even if they decide to continue to engage at all.
And what's interesting too is having experience with different choir directors. So um, when you work with someone, you learn to read their body language, their facial expressions, and of course, their verbal comments. So not just during rehearsal, but when you have had a series of events during rehearsals that has built up stress because of a particular piece of music in its entirety, or a particular section in a piece of music that is more difficult, or perhaps in a different language, or any one of a number of reasons. So you have X number of months of rehearsal, and all of this is building, and now you've got the performance. And live performances are tricky anyway. We all know that.
Definitely.
Murphy's Law. at its finest. So if your choir is not resilient,
Mm-hmm.
because of stress and worry, and not just during the performance, but what about the intermission? What about when you have to go back in that choir room and the director is having a meltdown because something went wrong in the first half? And then you have to go back out there, pretend nothing happened,
Yeah.
and continue to perform. And of course, you are still getting those messages in both the first half and the second half. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can be more vehement in the second half because he's already bent out of shape about what happened in the
Right.
first half.
Right. Right.
And I have to wonder, do choir directors actually have that sense of what this means and what it does during
Mm-hmm.
the rehearsals as well as during the performance?
I think it depends on their level of emotional intelligence. Are you emotionally intelligent enough to, number one, not have a meltdown in front of your in front of the choir? Because that is going to have a negative domino effect. I mean, you have to know that. And see, this is what goes back to everybody should not do everything, right? So
Mhm,
just because you can sing doesn't mean you should be a choral director.
mhm,
Just because you know music doesn't mean you should be a choral director. Just because you can sing doesn't mean you should be a vocal coach. See, those are two different skill sets that you may not have both, and that's okay.
mhm,
That's where you have to be emotionally intelligent enough to say, hey, okay, maybe things aren't going the best, but I'm going to encourage them. If things aren't going the best and I feel like they're not going the best, the choir has to feel it as well. They're
mhm,
actually the performers. Let me talk to them. Let me give them a pep talk. See, this is where everyone should not be a choir director, because in order to be a choir director, you should have multiple skill sets. One of them needs to be coaching,
mhm.
because what happens when something doesn't go right? Can you imagine, like at the Super Bowl, they have like during the halftime show when they get to rest and they're in the locker room and they are winning. I mean, they're losing horribly. And the coach just comes in and goes, well, everybody in here sucks.
Terrific.
And just starts screaming. I mean, the second half is going to be worse than the first half, versus the coach that comes in and knows how to breathe life into
Mhm,
those players. Number one, that comes from a genuine and sincere level of compassion and understanding and emotional intelligence, knowing how to encourage people when things aren't going the way that you may have mapped them out to go. And another thing about that, I think one huge thing, it has to be the choir director needs to envision and has to have a mindset of us as a choir versus this is my choir.
mhm,
Because if a choral director feels like this is my choir, then when something goes wrong, their ego is going to be damaged. And see, that's when it's like, you all are embarrassing me.
mhm,
I look bad. This is not the level of excellence of me. See, me, this is my choir. That's a problem, because you don't view it as a community. You view
mhm.
it as your property.
We live in color, emotional beings. From moment to moment, it can change.